Hello everyone, I hope that you've all managed to get in all right to the session. I'm incredibly sorry that we're running late, technical issues with Zoom. But what we're hoping to do here today is to present perspectives from both ends of the emerging collaboration between Oxford and the Oxford Climate Crisis Thinking in the Humanities and Social Sciences Network and the University of the Arts in Berlin. And we have some, we've been having conversations between various members of the network and staff and students in Berlin over the summer during this period of pandemic interference. And so we've had a few projects emerging out of this, and they're at different stages. But we thought that this would be a very good time to introduce the projects to the wider network and to all other interested people. And so what we're hoping to do partly is to show you how we think that collaborations between very different disciplines and internationally can work to start thinking of very creative and radical new ways of talking about climate crisis to different types of audiences, and to make us in the universities think in more creative and engaged ways. So what we're going to do is have some brief presentations on the different projects that are emerging. And what we'd like to do is, if we have time at the end, we're going to take questions and contributions and suggestions from the audience. But if we run out of time and we don't get to you, what we would really like to hear is anyone who is excited by what they've heard and would like to be involved with. So we're actively looking for people from more disciplines and more different backgrounds and organizations to jump in if they'd like to be involved. So not to take any more of the not very much time that we have today, I'm going to hand over to Nanneke, who's going to say a little bit about the specifics of the idea that we initially took to Berlin. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everyone. So I'm Nanneke Mathur. I'm an anthropologist based at Oxford. Along with Amanda, I co-convene the Climate Crisis Thinking in the Humanities and Social Sciences Network. One of the the projects we've been working on over the last year is something that we've termed Animal Eyes on the Planet. This is, just very briefly, it's sort of imagined as a collaboration with artists in Berlin and students in Berlin, as well as members of our network here in Oxford, many of us who come from very different disciplines and perspectives on this. But the idea was that we imagine some sort of a creative joint project through which we can challenge the anthropocentrism that is central to the climate crisis, and instead produce sort of a project or some sort of any kind of an installation or artwork or a story, some form of a representation that actually tries to reverse the gaze away from human perspectives or anthropocentric perspectives on the planet to actually think about how non-human animals might imagine the world. So what we're going to do here, just very quickly, as Amanda said, we're very short of time. So I'm not going to take up more time on talking about how we imagine this project going forward. But instead, we're really, really delighted to have our collaborators from Berlin here today. And I'm going to quickly just hand over now to Nina Nina Fischer from Berlin, who's going to briefly introduce Animals in the City, a particular project that they're working on. So Nina, over to you.
Yes, hello, my name is Nina. Most of you might maybe know me. I'm teaching at the UDK Berlin in the class of experimental film and media art. And we've been collaborating also with Amanda and Nanneke since last summer on this idea of shifting the perspective and watching the world, or have a look on the world with from the perspective of animals. And I've launched a seminar also this year together with Christina Landbrecht and also with my colleague Lily Kuschel, who probably is also here today. And we are offering a broader discourse about this subject. And we are inviting some guests. We already had a guest last week. It's Eko Soga, who's also part of the network in Oxford, to give a lecture about her work, artistic work and research about the Ainu culture in North Japan, in Hokkaido. And we are also preparing together with Lily Kuschel course, a practical course where students will research about wild animals in Berlin. And they are aiming to also shoot small film works or artworks, produce artworks about this research about this wild animals in Berlin, because there's not only wild animals in the nature, we can not only take their perspective, but of course we can also research in Berlin, especially today in these times of Corona where we can't travel much. I think it's also a shift of perspective to work nearby in the neighborhood. And our aim and what we really want to achieve is to realize an exhibition in probably 2022 together with Oxford, but we also try to have some collect some experience and some public presentations probably already next year, 2021 in Berlin, and continuing this seminar as an ongoing research about art in the age of climate change for the next 2 years. Okay, that's more or less a summary of what we are doing. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nina. If I could hand over now to Timothy to introduce the animunculus aspect of the project.
Yes, thank you, Nina, and thank you, Amanda, for this occasion to present you with a group of very wild young students who've been, across this summer, basically, and without any invitation on my side, I've been sort of seizing the extraordinary occasion that this collaboration between Oxford and UDK seems to offer in order to create their own artistic group, collaborative group, and develop their own research agenda around one specific idea that is very close to what Nyanika was expressing earlier, so these animal eyes on the planet. I've been exploring what this can contain as promises for both artistic creation and theory and reflection and interdisciplinary dialogues. And they will tell you a little bit more about this in the first part of our presentation, introduce themselves, and they will later on, as they wrap up their presentation, they will call their colleague to the stage. There's another research topic who's got to do with very promising explorations of a certain new type of anthropomorphism that he believes he has discovered. So I'm going to pass on the mic to the animunculus, who's a group of four students, and let them explain their worlds. Go ahead.
Okay, we'll just take a minute to install a presentation, I think. Ricarda and Inza are working on it, I see.
Yes, I'm working on it. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Perfect. So first of all, welcome to our short presentation. Thanks that you're joining us today and that you're joining us again. And first of all, I would like to introduce us as a group. We're 4 students of communication in social and economical contexts at the University of Arts. And we have all kinds of different artistic backgrounds. Some of us like to focus on photography, others to music, others specifically focus on illustration. And for this project, we decided to draw. And now I'm gonna tell you how that came about and what our idea is. So when we developed our idea for the Animunculi project, we decided on a few questions that are most important to us. And the first one was, how can we perceive animals differently? How can we start seeing them for who they really are and less as objects or beings that we just charge with human, meaning human culture, human interests, measures, and of course expectations. So to what extent is it possible, we asked ourselves, to distance ourselves from the very human perspective, but still keeping a connection? Because if there's no connection, then there's a high risk that we don't care about the animals, and that of course is highly problematic. So as we see it, a way to achieve this is through empathy. So we asked ourselves, what can be new and insightful ways to emphasize with animals and with their way of seeing the world. And we got the idea for the Animunculi project when we looked at this image of a homunculus. And what was very interesting to us about this image is how it is able to make us aware about where we are most sensitive in our human body. And it doesn't do that only on an intellectual level, but it's almost kind of also emotional and physical, because when I look at it, speaking for myself, I actually sense, okay, I'm more sensitive in my fingertips than at my calf, for example. And in this sense, it's a translation of the human perception. And in a broader sense, we want to find those translations for animals as well in our project. And so how can we do that? One way we try to do it is to research what we know from a scientific point of view about the animal perception, and then to translate it into artistic depictions. So for example, a question I would ask myself, or Ricarda asked herself, was, how could I translate the capacity of a cockroach to gain spatial information through pheromones, which is quite impressive, into a creature which makes it more accessible for a human to understand what that could feel like and how it could change your perception of the world. And now we're going to look at two images Ricarda created. On the left, you can see one drawing that emphasizes more the features of the cockroach in relation to what she found out about the perception of the animal based on scientific facts or findings. And on the right, she mixed those findings with a human-like creature. And the idea behind this is to make it easier for us as humans to imagine ourselves in the cockroach's body, basically. And this is one way or two ways we can think of the artistic translations.
Yeah, thank you. So why did we choose drawing as our medium? That is a good question. And as you already can imagine, there's just very little knowledge to fall back on. And the questions that we raise don't have one clear answer or an image. And as artists, we're also heavily influenced by our cultural beliefs. So what we try to do is to take a step back from the status quo and try to enter an animal-centered world. And in order to achieve that, we use the medium of drawing to deconstruct our own pictures and projections onto animals. Probably you already realized this. It's nearly impossible to draw an animal with all its details from your memory. And while drawing, we realize how many details we're missing and how this blank space are filled with cliches and stereotypes. Drawing, therefore, shows us not only how little we know about the animal and their experience of life, but also how little we actually can know. So what we try is to munkel. Munkeln is a phrase we have, and it can be translated into speculating and rumoring in the dark. But for us, it means the ongoing process and the ongoing approach of the ongoing process of approaching the unknown, and that ends in results of surreal and mystical forms and drawings of animals. And that actually draws many parallels to medieval depictions of monsters and animals. People at that time developed a belief system about animals and their spirits, which influenced and formed the pictures and drawings of them. And in a similar sense, we don't see drawing animals only as representing the way they look, but what shapes their existence. Therefore, drawing for us means recognizing. And in this process of these images of animals that will develop, all these drawings we want to collect in a lexicon. And this lexicon represents some sort of new and mystical zoology. Yeah, and at that point, I hand over to my colleague, Ricarda.
Okay, having stated that we cannot know, it wouldn't make much sense to simply present this lexicon as some finished work of science, maybe, because the animunculus is an image that doesn't deliver answers, but keeps on raising questions, keeps on munkling. So the core of this whole project is to make this lexicon not our final goal, but the starting point. So let's see this collection of images, these animunculus, as some sort of artifact. An artifact, you don't know where it emerged from exactly. Maybe it really came from the Middle Ages, where being left in the dark must have been quite common. So what do you do once you discovered an artifact? Well, you might want to examine it, discuss it, question it, talk about it together. So what this artifact needs is a platform, a participatory platform centered around the artifact and opened up to various kinds of actors. And at this point, this platform point, that's where the animunculus really begins to exist, because its existence doesn't constitute in being a fixed figure, but rather an ongoing process, a sort of becoming that's created and enhanced through discussion. So the animunculus is becoming not only a different kind of animal images, but also different kind of viewers of those images. And so our aim is to make this, to document this process of thinking and discussing and make it accessible, and maybe some sort of platform, like opening up our discussing to other people, discussing with us and thinking with us about those images and exploring the animals together.
Yeah, but so besides the idea of the podcast, there are also other forms of dealing with the topic in a participatory way. We would like to create a new approach to look at the animal world using different views, coming from different research fields. That could be immersive technology, for example, and so on. So maybe there's a sound designer who could transfer our so far very virtual animunculi concept into the world of sounds, or people coming from the field of humanities would be interested to analyze the animunculus from a historical perspective. So we are very open for other mediums other than drawing at this point, and we thought about how to show the results of this interdisciplinary research we are hoping for. So how could the framing look like? Maybe it could result in a collectively created website, any kind of exhibition that could be digital too, a book or a performance, or other forms of artistic presentation. So as you can see, the concrete shape of this platform is still in the making, and we would be glad to make it together with you, of course. For this reason, we are very excited about your ideas and your input. And since we are only 4 people and there are millions of animals living in our world as well, we are always happy to welcome new members to our team that would like to munkel and draw with us. So we first of all visualized a timeline to take a step into the process of the project. And starting from today on, we are planning to finish the artifact, our first collection of animunculi images, until about New Year. And after that, we would like to present the work in a kind of pre-release to you. This preview initiates the next step, which could be to enrich the project with your input. And of course, we will continue drawing animals, maybe also together with you. So from New Year on, we would expand our artifact with your ideas and work up to maybe spring 2021 in what we called the interdisciplinary dialogue. So in this exchange research process, we hope to generate the resulting platform, and we hope for an ongoing discussion maybe that could be also opened up to the public. So the timeline is of course just a first draft to structure the process time-wise. For now, we thank you for your attention. And now we would be very happy to munkel together with you.
Oh, yeah, we pass on the stick to our colleague Jeanne and his anthropomorphism.
All right, should I start next my presentation? Okay. Yeah, I also want to introduce you my project with a short presentation. I want to make a discipline about posthuman anthropomorphism studies, and I want to start with an anecdote. My cat has been eating this cat food called Felix for ages. The one with this shiny, happy black and white spotted cat. That's a bit of junk food. There's a lot of sugar in it. It's not good cat food and I can't get used to it. There's nowhere to find it anymore except in a discount chain. Since Corona has been, it's always sold out because some crazy people somehow eat it up. Now I'm trying to get him into the habit of other cat food. The weird thing is, any other new cat food what you get is a fancy something where the advertising is not made for cats, it is made for people. Chicken with parsnip or beef with quinoa, without coloring, without sugar. Hens designed as if they were from the organic supermarket. Ingredients that sound as if they are eaten by students. It's organic human food for cats. But I must sell the cat the food. He needs to eat this healthy food. He doesn't want it, he just doesn't want it. He doesn't feel like it and is so stressed about it. He refuses to eat it, meows at me, attacks me, tries to manipulate me with purring and a stare to make me feel guilty. What have I done? I'm simply powerless. I'm not a ruler, but a slave to the cat which is itself locked up. I can't change the behavior of a cat who has been eating sugary cat food and tuna for years. I want to hack the behavior of my cat, want to change the way how he eats because I think it's right. Castrated, imprisoned, robbed of any meaning in life, shakes me up and controls my behavior, shows that he is the more powerful. The whole idea we have of animals, what they expect, what they need, what they desire, speculating on a can of cat food around it. Anthropomorphism. For a long time, we considered animals to be less valuable than us. Now we are beginning to fill these other species with our issues and our behavior, the expectation of their character. Anthropomorphism is the attribution of human traits, emotions, or intentions to non-human entities. It is considered to be an innate tendency of human psychology. We anthropomorphize toys, cars, and also animals. We anthropomorphize them, and at the same time, we show again our mighty power and rate them as objects. The big childish-like eyes of Disney animals are lies that humiliate their own nature. We still believe that we are their savior and explain to them how they should be. The imperial power of humanity is still oppressing the other animals. Cartoons in our childhood, advertising for various products and political campaigns. Animals are everywhere in our culture. The human species want to build a relationship with animals, even though we live in animal unfriendly urban areas. Or maybe just because of that? Like in Human Zoo by Desmond Morris, zoologist and pop science author. In 1951, he began a doctorate at the Department of Zoology, University of Oxford in animal behavior. I want to discover the animals, do research on them in a cultural anthropomorphistic basis. We humans dream to talking to unknown alien species for so long, but do not understand anyone in the deep sea world or our own pets. I want to write about the humanization of animals, to change our perspectives at eye level with them. Different essays, like the process of making them less unpleasant and more suitable for our understanding of them. To look at this also in a posthuman way. Understanding animals and our relationship with them can give us a reflection to our lives. The first 3 essays I want to write until February 2021. and also about how the project can go further. It's like I opened the Pandora's box of cat food can and build up a big collection of the Holy Bible of posthuman anthropomorphism studies, like an essay collection about a theme. Want to talk with different people about and discussing it. Playing with products and playing with the visualization of things, like for example, why there isn't food, cat or dog food at this kind of way in the supermarket, and also the different way that we can eat our to-go food in a tin can. Also, it's very interesting to look up how advertisement is about food, about animal food, and also how the advertisement play with animals, and how other cultural and artistic ways we can see how we can play with the animal thing. Like also we can do music for cats, music for animals that they like more than we like. It's kind of a very big place where I can go.
Well, thank you, Jean-Michel. Thank you very much. I think we're back in the studio now with our friends from Oxford. I suppose that the presentation goes further. Amanda, if you want to take over the situation.
Yes, thank you very much. I absolutely love those presentations. So the next person who would speak, if we have her here, is Aiko Soga.
Hello, hi.
Okay, could I hand over to you to introduce yourself, please? Thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Eiko Soga. I am currently in my third year of PhD at Ruskin School of Art in Oxford. You might be able to see that my room is quite dark because I'm currently in Japan, in Hokkaido, to carry out my field work. Let me just share my screen. Okay. I hope it's showing. Please let me know if the image is not showing, because I'm just seeing my screen.
It is showing.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'm currently working with Ainu people, Ainu community in town called Samani, which is on this map. If you can see this little star, that's where I am right now. Ainu people are indigenous people in Japan, where yeah, you see the red areas is covered on the map, where Ainu people used to live. But unfortunately, Japan colonized Ainu, where Ainu people used to live. So they are now living as Japanese. But I am working with an Ainu elder who is known to be one of the last people to hold what people consider genuine Ainu traditional knowledge and skill set. I chose cooking, as Ainu cooking involves hunting and fishing and collecting mountain plants. So cooking isn't just following the recipe to eat, but it starts from understanding natural environment and knowing how to let those species come back next year, so people can continue to have more or less reciprocal relationship with natural species. So this is one of the events I went to for this Ainu event, but unfortunately we don't have time to talk about Ainu culture and history, so I'm just going to skip some of the images. So I'm learning cooking to, I see cooking as a site or place to exchange empathy between people and people and people and natural species. So which it involves witnessing a bear getting dissected or a deer getting dissected, or working with fishermen, which gives me experiential knowledge. So I'm using filming and creative writing to document those felt knowledge that I encounter. So this is a fisherman who collects seaweed. And yeah, this was a deer which got hunted a couple of weeks ago. So this, working in the field allowed me to really unlearn my social norm. I'm Japanese and I was born in Tokyo. So I very much have city-centric views. So what I'm trying to do here is to learn Ainu culture that evolved around, living among natural species and understanding how nature works. So, as much as working with Ainu people, it also relates to understanding different species. I'm in middle of my field work, so I can't give you much of the conclusion yet. I have 9 more months to go. But what I have come to believe strongly is the importance of this felt knowledge. What I mean by that is when I sense a strong feeling of empathy or overwhelming feelings that are generated by, for example, seeing a bear or a deer being killed, it takes me to, or it unpacks interrelated relationship between culture, history, nature, people, and emotional landscapes. So that helps me to get a little bit closer to understanding animal perception as much as people's perception, which I find really useful to think about environmental issues. I like to keep my presentation quite short so we can leave time for discussions and questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eiko. Nanika, did you want to come in briefly and respond? Just while we're seeing whether that will happen, what we're going to need to do for questions and audience comments is to ask you to put them in the Q&A. It's turning out to be a little bit tricky to give people the camera to speak for themselves. So if people would address in the chat any questions or comments that they would like to introduce. If also, while we're waiting for this to happen, if any of the panelists would like to comment on each other's presentations or to start some conversations, you of course can come in with the cameras and the microphones. Eiko, would it be possible for you to say a little bit more about the empathy aspect of your project? If we could perhaps reproduce just a little bit of what we were saying in Berlin last week on the empathy side, which I think resonated a great deal with a lot of the people who were present.
Yes, So I guess I can talk a little bit more about bear, encountering the bear. So the lady I work with called Mrs. Kanekumagai, her father was the last Ainu hunter in this region called Samani. And Ainu people used to have a ritual called Iomante, which is to celebrate or sending the spirit of Ainu bear back to where the gods belongs, which is a little bit complicated background to share in short time, but Ainu people used to believe everything had spirit, and there was no hierarchy between gods or spirit or divine beings and human. So when I learned about this ritual called Iomante and sending the spirit back, it was something new to me, and I didn't really understand what she meant. So, I read many books and watched videos, but I still didn't understand. I, had a view of because this ritual involved killing a baby bear that people raised for a year or two, very, very preciously, sometimes more preciously than human babies. So it didn't really make sense to me. So when this opportunity occurred, a local hunter had occasion to fight with a bear, so he killed it, and he called me to say, come over and just see this bear. So I spent 2 hours watching this bear being killed, and it was the most beautiful thing to watch. Before seeing this bear, I was really scared that I might find it really grotesque or hard to watch. But in fact, it was so beautiful. And I was very upset for the bear, but also very grateful. And that night, I felt I was really, my whole body was taken over by some kind of energy of the bear. And I had to pray all night. I'm not religious, but for first time in my life, I sincerely prayed for this bear to be sleeping in peace. And that gave me understanding of why Ainu people developed such rituals. And I don't think I still fully understand, but that, being in a space with this bear gave me a new learning, a new understanding, a new perception, which I thought was very important. So I told this story to students in Berlin last week. So yeah, I guess what I valued so much was to really use our physical senses when we talk about planet and climate issues, as much as we understand, learn from science.
Thank you. Timothy, did you?
Yeah, and I'm finding it very, very interesting moment in time to think about empathy as and to rediscover what empathy has in store, or has as unexplored potentials. If you think of the way empathy's been used or exploited in the last 10 years as a kind of how should I say, argument to justify lots of things, or just to basically to stage the way we look at each other online, and how to experience empathy for each other's situations, and all that. It's been somehow very much, I wouldn't say marketed, but empathy is a concept that's had a lot of success in the last couple of years. And we don't really yet know what to make out of it when we attempt to empathize with what is completely different from us. Yeah. Especially if we are also trying to empathize with characters or with living creatures which have completely different parameters of pain and awareness. Just to put it in a very simple way, how can we understand the promise of empathy on this level? How can we practice it in a way that is not only self-serving in some ways, as being some kind of a feel-good approach to the other, but really being it, like seeing it as a limit also of what we can know about them, and also a starting point to expect more from ourselves in the way we connect, or we're attempting to connect with something completely different. And I have in mind a very beautiful quote that I picked up from a talk that I was hearing about the Undercommons last week, and I can't really remember, unfortunately, who said it, but it's something I find extremely worth pondering about. It's the following quote: "Empathy is sympathy with those we see ourselves in, whereas and that's the first statement. Whereas solidarity is sympathy with those we can't see ourselves in." So that's really a very that's a lot of work to do about this quote, about this differentiation between empathy and solidarity, as being sort of dealing with the limits of what we can recognize as being ourselves, or what we can speculate as being the recognition of our own condition in the other. So solidarity as being some kind of solidarity with the living world is something that I find very interesting to work with, because also it acknowledges the fact we can't empathize with everyone. So we can't basically expect ourselves to empathize truly with every living, breathing, and suffering creature on this planet. So that makes it a discipline to develop. Find this interesting, and I'll try to find the original quote that I was sampling here for the audience to be referring to. It's something to think about. So that's my first reaction to this question.
Thank you. We have got some audience questions now. I'm just going to take them as they've come in. So one person asks, "Hi, this is for Animunculus. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. Would like to ask exactly who's doing the drawings, and perhaps if the drawings are more revealing of the artist's inclinations." Sorry, something disappeared. Inclinations and perceptions, perhaps through the development of their visual idiosyncrasies, stylistic depictions of animals throughout the project. This could reveal a change in the way the artist conceptualizes animal-human relationships. And just, I wonder if this one might also fold in, just because we're getting a bit short on time, and also be for Animunculus. The question, the notion of empathy, and is it possible to understand animals, plants, or people without forcing our own values and experiences onto them? And what would it mean to think about difference? Shall I hand over to Animunculus to answer?
Yeah, I would try to answer those questions. So, like we said, drawing for us is the process of recognizing in some forms. And who does the drawings? All of us draw because we think that's essential to our project. But like I said, some of us have more experience with drawing and some of us less. So I would suggest some of us have a more already achieved like a style for themselves. Others are more exploring the drawing from the start. But the interesting thing is that still, for example, Ricarda, she had already had a lot of experience with drawing. She's basically an illustrator. And on her behalf, or what she reported, is that she suddenly realized how she, for example, if she draws objects, she brings also some human life into them. And she does that through drawing eyes. And if you try to draw an animal and to empathize with it, she said, okay, so I realized I have the feeling I need eyes, but what are other ways to do that, for me to emphasize with the animals? How can I? So for her, she already realized certain aspects of her own stylistic choices, and tries to deconstruct them and find new ways. So of course, that's the first part of who does the illustration and how could it change the style of the illustrator. And for us, who maybe have a little less experience with drawing, especially if you want to join the project, that also will be very interesting for you. Drawing shows us, that's what we think, how we save an animal in our minds, which stereotypes we have of this animal. Because when we draw, we only have our imagination, our own belief system that we're referring to the animal, and so it helps us deconstruct those those imaginations on animals, which probably most come from cultural our cultural upbringing, and so it helps to deconstruct this and referring to the question, can we empathize with animals without projecting on them? I think probably that's very difficult, because we all will always stay in our human minds and in our human way of thinking. But through drawing animals and through questioning our own projections on them, because we deconstruct them, that's also already a big step, because then we come closer to maybe focusing less on what we learned about animals, but how we actually feel about them. Because it's also interesting to think about that there are animals that there's also interspecies that species also communicate, different species communicate, and they don't do that by making studies and counting aspects of the physical body on the animal. They do it from empathy as well. That's at least how we see it, and we try to maybe take a step back and to try, to take a step back from science and doing it all just through numbers and precise analysis, and do it more as maybe other animals do it for empathy. So that's the idea behind it. But it's quite difficult and it's a process. But drawing shows us where we are going.
Do any other animunculi want to come in on that, or are you happy?
No, I think Charlene stated it really well, and it goes perfectly with our opinions. Yeah, so nothing to add from this side. Thank you.
Thank you. Eli in the audience is also raising the question of what it would mean to think of a politics of difference and the notion of solidarity. It's sort of, and Nijneke also points out that the difference between empathy and solidarity, and the question of how one's own perspective is conditioning the way that we try and empathize and represent animals. It's a sort of really important emerging question here. So what are the limits of empathy? I like what Charlene said about empathy as a process. I think it's a kind of essential way of thinking about it. And I think perhaps something else, maybe for us all to think about, just as time is beginning to run out, the aspect of different medium. Nijneke is also bringing this up in the chat. I think everyone can see this, but the medium chosen by the artist or by any of us as we approach this from an interdisciplinary perspective, prose, drawings, audio, podcast, film, and how the medium chosen affects empathetic representations of the animal eyes. I mean, speaking as a medievalist, I know those drawings that the animalculists showed from the Middle Ages, and I understand what they're trying to do, and they're not necessarily the most empathetic in the way that we would understand empathy, because it's an attempt to project a set of values onto those animals and make the animals sort of speak. But I think the intention is quite complex, because these animals are seen as representing the will of the creator and how it's manifested in all sorts of different ways through the different forms of life and ecosystems on the planet. And so there is a very interesting cultural activity there as well that I think we can learn from as well. So that's just, you know, off the cuff, what a medieval historian might bring to this project. But I think what we would really like to see happen next is to flesh out the interdisciplinary perspectives on what we're talking about here today. And I don't think that there is a discipline in the humanities and social sciences that can't speak in really exciting and unexpected ways to the sets of issues that have been raised here today, and these kind of radical ways of trying to understand what is almost ununderstandable, and whether the result where the result falls between empathy and solidarity in a politics of difference or any other approach is sort of up for grabs. So I think what we would like to have happen next, I know that we must stop now. What we'd like to happen next is for anyone who would be interested in joining these conversations, and we are hoping that as you know, vaccine permitting, as things begin to open up again, that we can meet in person and go between the institutions and talk to each other in more kind of relaxed and developed ways. So please do email me or Nanika if you're in the Oxford end, or get in touch with Timothy or Nina in the Berlin end if this is something that you would like to contribute to building. Timothy, did you want to say anything from the Berlin side before we close?
Nothing particular besides my joy to see this happen, and perhaps just for those who would be interested, we're organizing a Ringvorlesung, which is a big cycle of lectures around the climate crisis and their resonance in the arts and cultural theory. There will be a guest tonight, if those who are interested should write us to get on board of this lecture, who's Theo Cassin Ghost Horse, who's a very well-known Lakota speaker for the Native Voices in America and in the United States, and he will speak also about his way of knowing, his way of approaching the question of empathy in connection with the natural world. So if that is of any interest to you, I think about it, because we just had conversations about this fine nuances. And if you're willing to get the address of the lecture tonight, I will be happy to provide it to you. That's all I would. That's all I had to add. So back to you, Amanda, and thank you very much.
Right. Well, it only remains to thank everyone enormously for speaking today. I was really delighted to hear again, and for the first time in some cases, the wonderful ideas that are emerging as part of this collaboration. And I'd like to thank all the audience for being here, and also thank Torch for putting it on for us. Thank you very much. Bye.